Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here and report to you a bit on QUALOSS here. So QUALOSS is also a European project from the framework program number 6. And we've a bit more than a year in, and this first year was really about trying to prototype some quality or methodology to measure the quality and more precisely evolvability and robustness. But what we've noticed, and just as a reminder here, so QUALOSS will dig its information from various repositories. So the repositories can actually be from the FLOSS project themselves, but also from other repositories. That is from the FLOSS metric, FLOSS small or squash, and eventually even outside project or research project own repositories, such as getting the data from interviews or even from other source of information like the Common Vulnerability Database, which tracks all the problematic issues regarding vulnerabilities and exposures that all software, not just free software, but everything, including free software, are mentioned. In the end, all of this is gathered in the QUALOSS repository and will then be viewed through, and this is somehow to summarize the quality model. We will eventually show little charts. This will help the people who integrates open source projects in their infrastructure, in their systems, or even the source, even the free and open source project themselves, to know the quality of their job or of the projects that they're using in their job. So one of the things that I find really tough to gauge in this first year was we talked about projects, and here also Jesus talked about project, but this notions of projects take millions of shapes and forms. So instead I've decided to move away from it and I talk about software endeavors. And this next slide tells you a bit what I mean by a free Deprez open source software endeavor. And it's composed of 4 things. The work products that the community produces, that can be source code, documentation, and many other things, roadmaps. All of that information turns out to be work product. You've got the community members. At first, when we started QUALOSS, we just kind of focused on these 2. We realized that we should have also paid attention to the tools in the development process, as they are somehow quite important when you start to look at the whole picture of a FLOSS endeavor. And I don't know if you guys can read it here at the bottom, but the FLOSS endeavor can also be defined at different levels, a bit how Jesus has mentioned projects, and sometimes it probably meant, or Gregorio also mentioned projects at the Apache level, but is it at the foundation level? Is it the HTTP project? What are we talking about? Well, here, the first thing that you need to do when you talk about a FLOSS endeavor is scope it, so that you now have an idea that I'm talking about this thing. And that thing can be a foundation if you want to, or it could actually be a project, and depending on different issues, you may want to look at different scopes, but at least you're pretty specific on what you're talking about. So if you're looking at software process, development process, it could actually be at the project level, like an HTTPD level, or it could be at the foundation level. What is the foundation doing to help its projects in terms of software development? And so, in short, when you talk about a FLOSS endeavor, you can view it as talking about an enterprise in the proprietary world. When you're trying to say, is this FLOSS endeavor robust, evolvable? It's a bit as asking, will this, in the proprietary world, is this company will last, and does it provide a robust support and robust productivity? And somehow this shifts the questions where we were talking about evolvable and robustness of software product, or sometimes of community in a sense, or what is the community doing to make its product evolvable and robust. To the question, what is an evolvable and robust FOSS endeavor, or enterprise, if you wish? Are these people, you can have a great bunch of people who seems to be having a first generation great product, but then the software process are not well in place, and that actually could do the whole thing. And instead of just focusing on software product and community, we will also add the notions of the tools and the processes, the software development processes used. When I say tools, I don't just mean support tools. I didn't point that out on the previous slide. I also mean tools such as the compile time and runtime libraries that are necessary for the projects to run on. So if you have a project that uses another open source component underneath, is that open source component also robust and evolvable? And if not, how coupled are these two things? And could that have a very, very strong impact? If, for example, if, and I know that Martin might be tickled by this, let's say if Zoe dies tomorrow, then what happens to clone? You know, so, but I know this is not going to be the case, but I mean, there are some coupling issues between projects that are very important to measure as well when you talk about the quality of a FOSS endeavor. I'll go back to this one after. So the situation where we want this QUALOSS methodology to help, really, and we've identified two very kind of scenarios where the methodology should be very helpful. The first one is where you want to compare various FOSS endeavors, and I say not just product here, endeavors, because when you are selecting an endeavor to bring in your infrastructure or in a product that you're developing, you're not adopting just a product, you're adopting a whole enterprise here, a whole FOSS enterprise, or endeavors as I've called them. And you may decide to introduce them in a product or a service that you sell in an infrastructure or in some kind of ASP application server solution that you are developing. And now the question is, I have these 5 that are functionally adequate for me to use. And now which one is the best? Which FOSS endeavor has the more chance to last in the future and always deliver some robust product for me? That's the first kind of goal. And then the second one, which is more a concern from the open source community people that we've met, which was somehow more like an improvement. They want to monitor what's happening in their community and with their product, and how the software processes are happening, where maybe they're weak and they could improve. And therefore, as part of QUALOSS, we've got two I would say companies that have been involved with us, and one is Zaya Partners, who's behind Clone, so that and they've been interested in terms of how can we gauge quality and measure testing and test results. And there is also Adacor, who's developing the Net Pro compiler, and they're also interested in these issues. And one last point that I mentioned here at the bottom is it's also very interesting to keep an eye on potential tension that could arise in a FOSS endeavor, so that you can eventually address it before it breaks the community apart or generates a fork. So in a way, it would be nice that the methodology we come up with has the ability to somehow identify where there might be some tension. So now, in terms of how the requirements regarding the applicability of the method, one of the things and the most important things that we realized is that there is not a unique solution And in some cases, you have a scenario where people are willing to spend a few hours and they want to get an answer. Is this floss endeavor of good quality or not? Or and when I say good quality, I mean is it evolvable and robust or not? And in other cases, people are willing to invest much more time and effort and dig much deeper. So the methodology that we propose, as you'll see in my last slide, will address all these issues here. The intensity of the effort, and who is doing the evaluation? Is it done by the actual company who wants to measure, let's say you want to adopt a floss product in your company and you actually go and measure the floss product yourself, or do you hire some specialist to do it? Who is doing the evaluation? And that also varies depending on the money you have, how much you want to invest. So the solutions we are actually developing at the moment will have a three levels of granularity in the methodology. The first one, the flight weight, will be really an improved version of OpenBRR and SAS. If you look at these methodologies, they are fairly simple to apply. They have their shortcomings, and we hope to they don't have the same shortcomings, so that's also nice. So we can try to have a consolidated version of these methodology to assess open source, but we can try to just take all the advantages they have, each of them, and compile them together. In the next level, we have the middle weight. The middle weight will be pretty much somewhat measuring the same kind of information than the lightweight, except we will throw a lot of tools at it. And why didn't we throw a lot of tools at first? Well, here, the level 1 here, you can give it to any organization and they should be able to do this, and they won't have. They won't need an expertise in running tools, in going to get the data, and eventually scoping the data, because one important thing that you'll notice is that all these repositories, even if they come from one project, they will give scopes on different data sets that are not really necessarily matching very well. So for example, if you take one of the mailing lists at the Apache site, the dev mailing list is for the main HTTPD and also for some of the module, which is a sub-project within the HTTPD project. For the test project, they have another mailing list. So now, do you aggregate all of the mailing lists together? Don't you? All these scoping issues become quite important. If you want to measure community activity, you need to measure the actual real community you're measuring. You can't just say, oh well, and these thousands of mail messages here, which are about the sub-project test of HTTPD, I'm going to include them. Just because the tools just make it so much easier if I include them. Yeah, but if you include them, that somehow maybe impact and affect the outcome of your analysis. And the heavy weight will be much, that's the last level of the methodology that we propose. We'll focus on a few of the issues that we have found important when we interacted with various people, which were community testing, development processes, and maintainability. There have been quite a lot of concerns regarding those. And so at that point in time, we're not just going to measure the traditional way. We will also have and propose some manual approach to measure certain things, such as the quality of the documentation, maybe, or does it, the development processes, the likelihood is that you will need to do a very intensive manual activity there in order to actually gauge whether the floss endeavor has some processes and whether they are rigorously followed. So to go back to the requirements that we had initially, the first two levels will really be in order to compare floss endeavors, and the last one will be for the improvement camp. So usually a company involved in the floss project may actually be interested in performing improvement analysis to see where they can help the project maintain its level of, or improve its level of performance. The other two, it's more for companies who may want to, measure several options they have, several projects that they may decide between and then select the right one. And so I believe this will be my last slide here. And again, like Jesus mentioned, for Flossmetric, a lot of the information can be found on the QUALOSS website, QUALOSS.eu, among other things, the deliverables we've turned in so far. So I think I don't have much time anymore, and I'll take any questions afterwards.